What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Ryan Hallam, and this is another edition of Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. Ryan, another week, a few casualties along the way when it came to injuries, but nothing like week 2. Controversies, a whole mess of drama. This is why we play the game, my friend. How are things?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, it definitely isn't quite as bad as last week when we just saw superstar to superstar go off. We did, like you said, a couple, nothing too major this week. So, everyone now can just complain about losing because their team isn't good enough rather than some of their studs going out in the first quarter. But yeah, overall, another good week. NFL just keeps popping, man, and just loving fantasy football season this year.
Yeah, and from the way it seems, Ryan, hamstrings and knees keep popping too, man. I keep losing my running backs. I feel like I'm cursed. Dude, what are you doing? Why are you doing that for me? You know very well that I'm fasting.
I didn't get lunch. I didn't get lunch today.
Okay, so you know I haven't eaten in almost 12 hours. So first of all, you're eating on the stream, number one. Where's the professionalism in that? Number two, you know that it's Yom Kippur, and I've sinned a lot, and I'm going to be fasting for probably the next 60 days at this point, and you're eating in front of me, ruining my train of thought. What are you doing?
I'm sorry.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to try to ignore you. Okay, thank you. You're done eating now? You're done? You want to wash up?
Yeah.
Why don't you have a nice milkshake or something? Shove that in my face. Oh, perfect, Ryan. Perfect. Thank you. I don't hate life right now or anything. Instead, Ryan, you know who probably is hating life right now? Mitchell Trubisky and Tariq Cohen, for that matter, because the news has come out, and I'll let you finish chewing, Ryan, and I'll set you up a little bit, that when it comes to the quarterback situation in Chicago, and I've spoken to Adam Ronis, our guy, about this a bunch, and he said it's a bad look. It's even worse look when you go starting with Nick Foles, and then you go to the guy whose fifth-year option you declined. And I understand that to an extent, and from the way you seem to understand it. However, as someone who was heavily invested in the Bears offense, whether it be Allen Robinson or Anthony Miller, I wanted Nick Foles starting from the get-go. You traded for him. Why not start him?
Yeah, I think everyone did. Now karma's going to get me because now I have a piece of salt in my throat. Yes, I am very heavily invested in Allen Robinson. And I was, and a lot of teams also have Anthony Miller, who has some good chemistry with Trubisky. Not this year. So, yes, I could not have been happier to see Foles come in. That's who I thought it was going to be all offseason. But then, when it was Trubisky, I'm like, well, Robinson did fine last year with Trubisky at quarterback. Maybe he'll be okay. But clearly, it was not happening so far in 2020. So I'm very happy that they made the switch, pretty early, that we don't have to deal with this anymore. And I think at least a pretty professional quarterback is under center now. And yes, anyone who has Allen Robinson, and especially Anthony Miller, because he, like I said, he wasn't getting targeted. It was more Darnell Mooney was starting to get some targets from Trubisky. So people with Robinson, people with Miller are definitely happy to see Foles come in.
And I know that as fantasy players, we're all focused on the points, Ryan. And with that, I find that people aren't focusing on the entire stat line. And a lot of people were asking me whether or not to drop Allen Robinson, and I'm not joking, and it frightens me to say that, Ryan. And clearly it makes you cough because, it makes anyone choke to hear just that. But the guy was getting targeted 9 times a game. How can you be upset with that? When you see the targets 9 times a game, it's almost like when you have a high point total in fantasy, but you keep losing matches, eventually you're going to reach a few soft matchups and you're going to get it back. That's happened a bunch, Ryan, which is why I'm constantly focusing on my points for, points against, rather than the record itself, to really give an indication on how my team is. In this situation, it was the same thing. Allen Robinson, 9 targets, didn't do too much with it, and then voila, big week 3 payoff, and now everybody loves him and his best friend again. Allen, if you're watching this, I've been on your train the entire time. I wasn't getting off of it. I saw those 9 targets, and please, thank you again, and keep producing at a high level.
And I have more than one Allen Robinson versus Odell Beckham Jr. bet going this year with Impemba and some of the other family out on Twitter. So I was even more happy to see it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, when you see the usage and the guy with Robinson who has the career he has, which has had its ups and downs, but he's a really good receiver. You know it's coming. The problem is we get so many people, especially in the Fantasy Alarm chat rooms, that are just freaked out at 0-2. Like, I'm 0-2, I need to do this. Like, people think because they're 0-2, they need to revamp everything they've been doing. and start their guy who's at the end of their bench that they didn't even want when they drafted over some star because they're 0-2. So I think there just becomes so much panic. Fantasy football season is really 14 weeks, 13 weeks. So, you go down 2 and people start to lose their mind when they really have to pay attention to what's going on. Guys get off to tough starts. They play good defenses. We didn't have a preseason. I mean, there's lots of reasons why. And it's just 2 games. Lots of reasons why. A lot of time it's coming. You just have to be a little more patient.
0-2, you're fine. 0-3, you're fine. 0-4, in my opinion, you're still okay. Once you start hitting 0-5, that's when you got to go all in. But there are so many people, Ryan, that see that 0-3 record. They're in last place in their office league. They're getting made fun of, whether it's on Zoom or Slack or any kind of social media platform. No one wants to be that. No one wants to see it. No one wants to be at the bottom of the barrel. But there are definitely ways you could come back from 0-3. Last year, I was 3-6 in a league that only 4 teams make the playoffs. Again, my points against was very, very high, the highest in the league. My points for, I had the second highest for. I was right behind first place, who was undefeated at the time. And I still fought. And I had a bunch of injuries, especially on receiver. I still fought. I ran the table. I won the championship. Another time, and Ryan, I talked to you about this before, I started out a season 0-7. And then I went, and I could have just said, okay, I'm packing it in, but I didn't want to ruin the sanctity of the league, and I wanted to still set my lineups, and I'm a competitor. That's just who I am. I actually went on a 7-game winning streak to end the season at 7-7, just missing the playoffs by point differential. And with that, Ryan, that is possible to come back, especially when you're 0-3, whether it's all of a sudden spending a little bit more than you originally would to get someone that's on waivers, making that trade. And especially with these injuries, Ryan, that's something that we should want to do, but trade out of need, not desire. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah, and fantasy football is it's very fickle. Almost every week something happens on some team that changes the stock of 3 or 4 players. I mean, we have a Stockwatch article. You do a Stockwatch video. I mean, this is how often things change. So, yeah, you might be 0-3. You're right. It's not over. Granted, if he lost Saquon Barkley and Michael Thomas and whatever else, all right, that really hurts. There's sometimes you can't come back, but you should at least still try. Right. But the point is, every year there's people off the waiver wire that you never saw coming. And then all of a sudden, they're just consistent producers from week to week. If you're 0-3, what you have to do is pay more attention, not pack it in. Because that's when you need to, if you could make 1 or 2 moves that, get 1 or 2 impact players that we didn't, maybe didn't see coming, you could change the entire, course of your season. And if your guys got, your stars had 1 or 2 bad games, it means there's good games coming. I mean, a lot of players, their stats are somewhere in the realm of the same from year to year, at least within some reason. So if your guy had 2 catches for 15 yards and then 3 catches for 23 yards, chances are, if it's a good player, there's good games coming. Right. So, you don't have to change your whole team. Make a couple moves if you can make a trade. I also don't like doing the trade where I'm trading off my best player for 2 lesser parts. I feel like that it just contradicts,
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because okay. I have a different take on that. And that's, I'm willing to give up the best player in the deal if I'm fulfilling a need. This is, Ryan, specifically for fantasy football. I've said this a few times, and I want to make it clear. Fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, fantasy hockey. This does not apply because we have more games. We have more action. We have literally 17 weeks. And if you play fantasy football correctly, 16 weeks to make it all work. That's it. Once a week. That's your shot with that player. So with that, Ryan, if I am so loaded, and here's an example, let's say I went with a Adam Ronis recommended model, which he was going with a decent amount, which was trying to grab that running back in the first round, then taking advantage of the receivers in the second and the third, while everyone's trying to guess whether or not Le'Veon Bell and Adam Gase are in bed together and he's going to get more production. Didn't happen. And Todd Gurley, is his knee going to hold up? So instead of having to do that and stress about that, instead, you go after a dominant wide receiver. We talked about where you could get those guys in the second, third, and fourth round. So if you did that, Ryan, let's just say you picked something like Tyreek Hill, Allen Robinson, and Calvin Ridley subsequently after your running back, you are now in a great position of strength, especially if you're only starting 2 wide receivers. That's why, Ryan, when I'm talking about a guy like Calvin Ridley, who's the #1 wide receiver out there in fantasy, you could get top dollar for him right now if you have the receiving core to back it up. If you have a few maybes, you don't know. It's going to be up and down the production. That doesn't apply. But that's what I'm saying, Ryan, that even if I'm giving up Calvin Ridley because my running backs are hurt and I need a running back, I'm giving up the best player in the deal. Sometimes you have to do that to address that other position.
Yeah, I'm not saying never. There are some times where it's okay, and yes, if you are really stacked at one position, I could see you doing that. I don't want to trade Ridley and get, Gurley and David Johnson. That's not helping you. Two decent guys for one star.
I was actually about to ask you, what if it was Joe Mixon and David Johnson?
Yeah, I think Joe Mixon is also off to a bad start. Same as last year, really bad start, obviously. That I think he's going to come around. I think it might take a little while, and he's certainly not the 6th overall or the 7th overall pick that he was becoming towards the end of the draft season. But his production's going to come. I don't know when, right, but it's going to come at some point. He plays in a really tough division. The Steelers are a great run defense. The Ravens are a great run defense. And the Browns defense is pretty decent. So that's 6 pretty tough games for the guy right off the bat. The offensive line is garbage. Joe Burrow's basically running for his life on almost every play. But he's good enough that it's going to come at some point. So, yeah, I feel like Mixon is still a pretty high-level running back, even though he's off to a bad start. He's one of these guys, if you are 0-3, you got to just keep running him out there. It's going to come for him at some point. So, yes, if you're getting somebody of that caliber and then another starting-level running back, then I could definitely see making that trade.
Well, here's the thing with Mixon, too, Ryan, is that this is the week. He's the ultimate buy low this week until his game. Once that expires, because – what does he have? Jacksonville this weekend? He should be able to take advantage of the Jaguars. Now, you could look at it one of 2 ways. If he doesn't produce against Jacksonville of all teams, we're not going to want to trade for him. We're not going to have that motivation. You're going to have to look past that if you still want to trade for him. Now, if he does well, you're not getting the good deal on Joe Mixon anymore, despite the matchup. So this is the time. If you need a running back, you have a team that you've lost Saquon, Tariq Cohen, let's say combined with another running back, you're stuck with just one running back and Malcolm Brown, then yes, try to trade for Joe Mixon this week. In fact, Ryan, do it today, not tomorrow, not after your next little snack, Ryan, right now. Because now, oh God, I shouldn't have said anything. He's going to grab the food. He's going to start coughing again, and that's going to be just excellent. But right now, everyone's emotions are flying. It's the day after Sunday. It's like the morning after a crazy night of partying. You're essentially hungover with all these emotions, but so are your league mates. And once waivers opens up on Tuesday, that becomes the focus. If they grab someone, they're not going to want to trade with you. They are able to snap up someone all of a sudden. Now they have depth. They're not going to make that trade with you. Mondays, even Sunday nights, but Mondays, that is the trade day. It's a very emotional day. It's a long day before the Monday night game when the week officially ends. And that's why, Ryan, if you want to mess with your league mates' emotions and you want to make those trades, Monday, in my opinion, is the best day to do so.
Can't argue with you there. You make me laugh on these things all the time. How you treat this like emotional warfare. It's very entertaining all the time. But you are exactly right. Like,
Ryan, we are veterans in this industry. You and I have been working in the fantasy industry for over 10 years. And especially with me, I mean, you remember, you were on all those Sirius XM shows. You're in the Fantasy Alarm chat. I'm on the Sirius XM shows. Nothing changes. Everybody is so paranoid all the time. Everybody focuses on this happened last year. It's going to happen this year. And that's not the case. But if there's one thing that I love to do is that I love to read my league mates' emotions because it's helped me in draft season. It's helped me make trades, even though I hate to make trades. It's also helped me with waivers, too, when I feel out who's going to be spending this week and whether or not I should put the dollar amount up. I ask the right questions, and just when they think they have all the answers, Ryan, I change the questions, in the words of Roddy Piper. So that's why, Ryan, I'm very into the emotional game because there is such an emotional game when it comes to fantasy football.
Absolutely. Go sit in the Fantasy Alarm chat rooms for a little bit. You'll see what's out there. I mean, we were getting questions, even Sunday morning. I was getting one like Joe Mixon or Malcolm Brown. I was like, how low is it? So if we were getting that question and then he went and tossed another bomb out, now his owners are really pissed with him. So
Right.
yeah, I think to me he is one of the ultimate buy lows. Is he going to have 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns? He's not, but he's sure as hell going to start doing a lot better than he's been so far.
He should. Now, let's talk about another running back. We were talking about the Bears before. With Tariq Cohen out of the way, how are you valuing David Montgomery? Because this was a player that I did not like in draft season. I don't have him in for anywhere, but I have a lack of running back depth because of all my Saquon shares, my McCaffrey shares, which are currently on ice as well. I had Cohen shares. I thought I was getting great value for him, and he was going to be more impactful before he went out. So when it comes to David Montgomery, Ryan, the confidence level after this game has to be very, very low. I mean, he was averaging 5 yards per carry, and then he put up a David Montgomery stinker in week 3. However, the silver lining to all this with no Tariq Cohen, he has been getting targeted 3 times a game in passing game. And that, to me, screams a little bit more production is about to be going in his favor. Normally, I'd be a lot more worried about Cordero Patterson. But at the same time, if he's going to start to get targeted in the passing game maybe 5 to 6 times, that's going to add up in our PPR leagues.
Yes, if you remember correctly, I came on with you and Adam after the FSGA draft, and I did draft Montgomery. I've drafted Montgomery a lot. I'm the opposite of you. I have him on probably, 65% of my teams, just because he was just falling so far. I just felt like here's the starting running back on a pretty okay offense with a decent offensive line, and hopefully Nick Foles was going to, even that out a little bit. Yeah, I think he's good. Yeah, he had a bad game, a really, really, really bad game. But everybody does. I mean, it can't just lose his value on one game. He's had a couple other good games, and like you said, yeah, he's been getting targeted. And without Cohen, he really wasn't splitting targets with Cohen anyway. But yeah, they don't really have another running back. Cordero Patterson is kind of their backup running back. So is he going to get a couple carries? Yeah. Is he going to get maybe a couple more targets? Probably. But I also definitely think that Montgomery is going to see some as well. And he's been pretty decent out there the first 2 weeks. Obviously, again, yesterday was terrible, but, they can't all be great.
Another buy low option for all of you guys, but it's going to end. This has an expiration date. He comes out in week 4 and completely dominates. I almost said, watch him have an Alvin Kamara type of week. I'm not saying that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going that far. Let's slow down, Speed Racer. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. But if he comes out and has a mega performance, you're not getting the deal anymore. That's it. You're done. You're going to be trading from behind the 8 ball if you're going to go after Montgomery. You have about 3 days to figure this out if you want to trade for David Montgomery. You're thinking you have the entire week. And I've talked to a lot of people, right? I'll handle this on Thursday or Friday. Doesn't involve the Thursday game, right? Well, that's why I'm saying trade today. You have to. This is the best time to trade it. I'm going to keep saying it because a lot of you are ready to pack it in. But one trade and a couple of pickups and you're back in it. We're not lying. We're not trying to sell you. You know that when you're part of the family, we're going to be here to help you. Ryan's mentioned the chats. With that, we're here to help you. We don't have to endorse anything more. You ride with us. You know that we're with you till the end. But Ryan, at the same time, people need to realize the urgency because we've had a lot of freaking injuries and they need to be trading today.
Absolutely. The really funny part to me when we talk about the psychology of fantasy football is, like you said, today everyone hates every player on their team that underperformed. But you know what? The second they get a trade offer for David Montgomery, then all of a sudden it becomes great again. He's like, oh no, people always think their guy is better than they should. And they, so if you trade for him, like, oh, what am I missing now? What do you want him for? But if you do it today, they're still pretty pissed off at Joe Mixon and David Montgomery from yesterday, to the point where they're more thinking, oh, here's a chance to unload this guy, as opposed to, oh, you're coming after him, so maybe you know something I don't.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's a game of skill in the mental game as well. You learn about your league mates if you want to. Not a lot of people play the psychology up, and that's why I love talking to you. I love talking to Howard about it as well. Ronas is more of a straight shooter with that. Ronas is like, I'm just going to win the league. I don't need to pull any tricks or anything. That's Ronas's attitude. But whenever I talk with you and Howard, I just have such a great time having these types of conversations because these are things that you're not going to see when it comes to snap counts and next-gen stats and everything. This is a whole other element of the game that if you're not aware of it, you're not going to see it. You're going to miss it. You're going to get played at some point. So that's why we're sounding the alarms and raising the awareness on that front. Let's talk about a controversial moment that we had, Ryan, because week 3 did not go without controversy. And his name is DK Metcalf. Had not scored that touchdown, Ryan, I was ready to go on air on SiriusXM and eviscerate this guy. But here's the problem. I would want the audience to back it up, but they got their touchdown. And you know, as well as I do, Ryan, while some who are probably that have lost by 5 points and that Metcalf touchdown, for those that missed it, by the way, DK Metcalf caught an amazing pass, had a touchdown. He had it. But like Calvin Johnson did a few years ago, he didn't cross the plane with the ball. Now, what DK Metcalf didn't do, he didn't think he had a defender around him. He didn't protect the football. He was holding it, cuffing it with one arm. And of course, what happens? The Dallas defender comes in and pops it right out, goes to the back of the end zone. A touchdown turned over in that regard, Ryan Hallam. And for those that have lost by 5 or 6 points, despite Metcalf scoring and making up a little of it, you lost by 5 or 6 points. It's his fault.
I had several DFS lineups yesterday that was the margin of me cashing, was that touchdown. So yes, I am not a big DK Metcalf fan. And as a 49er fan, I tend to hate the Seahawks with every fiber of my being anyway. But I actually really love this guy. I think he is such a rising star. I think he might be a top 5 wide receiver next year, maybe by the end of this year. He's just so big and he's so fast and he just catches everything. And him and Russell Wilson just have an amazing connection. That pass was in the air for it felt like 8 seconds in the air. Like he was just sitting there waiting for it to come down. But he hit him in stride. It was an absolutely perfect pass. But yeah, I mean, he just, lollygagged it into the end zone and took the foot off the gas, figuring he had it. And, I think it was Trayvon Diggs came through and punched it out. And just, usually the guys will look at the video screen to see if they've got somebody behind him. I don't know if they're not doing that because of there's no fans in there or not, or he just literally wasn't paying attention. But he had the guy beat. It was a long touchdown. Yeah, that was probably a 14-point play right there for fantasy between the catch and the touchdown and the yardage. It was, I don't remember how long it was, but it was more than 50 yards. So yeah, he cost me a few bucks, and I'm sure he cost some people some fantasy matchups as well. But I will say, I bet he doesn't make that mistake again.
Right. I mean, that was one of the biggest boneheaded plays you can make. And if you're Pete Carroll, I'm spitting my gum right in his face at this point. I'm so mad. I can't keep the gum in my mouth. So with that, it's one of the situations where, yes, he did score the touchdown. So I'm sure some of you were a little bit settled about it. I wasn't, as a Metcalf owner. He had it. It's one thing if he went up, didn't make the grab. He made the catch. That's the problem. He just made the catch. And with that, that's the issue with the whole thing. All those points that it cost us, Ryan. And by the way, Ryan, I want to ask you this here because Russell Wilson has been one of the top performers in fantasy. And also, you mentioned DK Metcalf as a possible top 5 wide receiver. Where are you at with Tyler Lockett, Mr. 3 touchdowns? Can he be a top 10 wide receiver next year when it comes to draft?
I think right now, just the Seattle offense, I think they're throwing more than normal this year. I'm not exactly sure why, but there's no doubt they are. I think Wilson has 14 touchdowns and 1 interception, so I guess it's working. Obviously, it's one reason they're doing it. They also aren't exactly playing great defenses so far, but Wilson is just amazing. And Lockett is a nice receiver. I don't see him quite getting up that high. I still think Metcalf is going to turn out to have more touchdowns. He pretty much catches one almost every single game, and I think Lockett had 1 coming into yesterday. Now he has 4. But I still think that Metcalf is more of the red zone guy. I know Metcalf, a couple of Lockett's were short yesterday, but him and Russell Wilson just have an amazing connection. They can't keep this pace up. He can't throw 5 touchdowns every week. They have to start playing some better teams. I know they torched the Patriots, who are a great defense, but it's got to slow down at some point. So I think it would be a mistake to put Lockett quite up that high. I think he could be top 20 for sure, but I think top 10 is probably going to be a little high for him to reach up into.
And I'm so glad you brought this up because this is another part of the psychology of fantasy football. Now everybody is so used to guys like Russell Wilson and Josh Allen putting up 30-plus points in fantasy They're now expecting it every single week, no matter the matchup. That's not how it works, Ryan. I set my expectations for my quarterback, no matter who it is, so I don't have those crazy, huge expectations and I'm let down, and then I make a stupid move. So to keep myself in check, I put my goal for my starting quarterback at about 15 to 17 points. That's what I do. That's what I want. And especially with a lot of the quarterbacks that I do have, guys like Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, who I drafted for essentially $1, Daniel Jones, which, like, Gavolt, that hasn't been working out. But when it comes to my quarterback, when people are saying, oh, he's going to get 40 points, doesn't matter. That's not how it works. It's matchup by matchup. You have to expect, no matter who your quarterback is, you have to expect a blunder or two. And that's something, Ryan, I feel like that people don't think about. They just think, oh, he's been averaging 30 points a week. That's what it's going to be. It's not like scoring in the NBA. It's not like LeBron James. You know he's scoring 20 points. It's not that. It's the quarterback position. There's a lot out of the quarterback's control. And I feel like that's what people don't understand, Ryan. And that's why I'm telling people that now's the time. The ultimate sell high with Josh Allen. Now's the time to try to sell him to someone that thinks that he's going to be getting 30-plus fantasy points every single week the entire season.
Yeah, he is very good. I would make sure you got a heck of a deal for Allen. Obviously, he's playing a little above his head at the moment, but with the rushing yards, he is quite a pretty good contributor. So obviously, he's not going to score 30 points a week, but I think he is going to be a pretty solid week-to-week contributor. Him and Wilson and Dak Prescott has put up a ridiculous number of yards and fantasy points. But again, you got to see the matchups. And the flip side is Daniel Jones. I mean, let's look at the Giants have played 3 really tough defenses to start the year. San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and the third one's escaping me at the moment. But I know it was another very good defense. Granted,
and now they have the Rams.
Now they have the Rams, which is another pretty good defense. Not on the level of the other two, but very good. The turnover bug is still biting him. He's still very careless. But he's played the best defenses in football. They do it to a lot of players. Let's look around what Pittsburgh has done. San Francisco, I know they played the Jets and the Giants the last 2 weeks, but they're a pretty good defense as well. So as much as sometimes you look at the defenses for guys who are doing very well, you also have to look at it for guys who are doing pretty poorly.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important, especially with the quarterback, to look at that schedule. And we've been telling you, and I said it during the Stock Watch video too, we've been telling you since you drafted, a disclaimer. We literally put the disclaimer on Daniel Jones that said, this is going to be a frustrating first 4 weeks. You may want to, if you have the bench depth, to either get another quarterback or watch those waivers to stream early, and then you can enjoy Daniel Jones. Now, we didn't think that Sterling Shepard would be hurt, that Saquon Barkley would be done for the year. But he still has other options. And that's why in a league that I have, in the couple leagues that I have him in, very deep leagues, that's why if I have the bench depth, which is about 9-10 spots for me, I'm fine with stashing him as long as my team is in peril right now. So, Ryan, that's something else that people have to remember, how many bench spots you have. I have some leagues that have 5. I have some leagues that have 11. So it varies pretty much with the league. Want to go over a couple of injuries very quickly just to mention Chris Godwin. We're still waiting. He's getting another MRI. It seems like first the concussion took him out. Now the hamstring. Was talking to Dr. David Chow last night about this too, and he was reporting that it could be a little bit worse than anticipated. So we'll have to see. So all of a sudden, Mike Evans, the darling, he didn't get targeted a lot. He got the touchdowns, but then you go back to week 2 where he got more in terms of yardage, and now you can expect Mike Evans there. And then on the other side, Ryan, as well, we were talking about the Seahawks, Chris Carson. When he went down, I said, there goes another running back of mine. I was about to be down 3 running backs, but the MRI came back. It's a minor sprain. And so what's good about that is it's looking like from the early reports that if he misses time, it will be just 1 week. There's still a chance, according to reports, that he plays. I'm not sure about that. Luckily, though, I have Carlos Hyde on a few teams, so could be flex worthy, or even maybe my RB2 if I miss my bids in a couple of my pathetic leagues.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are playing Miami this week, so that is a nice little gift to be playing not a great defense. And Hyde, he had 1,000 yards for the Texans last year, so as much as I'm not a huge fan, he's not a bum. So if Carson is out, he can get you through a week, maybe two, although like you, I've seen it's probably going to be 1 week at the most. And yeah, it definitely looked worse.
You think he tore his ACL?
Yeah, that was like the Cowboys defender was like an alligator with his prey just rolling around on the ground with him with his leg in his hand.
Yeah, the Jim Bowden took over my mind for a second because I saw that. I'm like, he gone. That's literally what my reaction was. And I'm like, wow, channeling my inner Jim Bowden right there. So
best case scenario. He got the best case scenario for sure.
Yes, absolutely. For sure, because that did not look great. Ryan, let's talk about Monday Night Football. I am so excited for this game. You got the Ravens, you got the Chiefs. I'm really hoping that this is our AFC championship right here. Now, we do segments on the Alarm After Hours show regarding bets and where you have to take underdogs. And I, at the time, this was now 4 or 5 days ago, I had taken the Chiefs, who were the underdogs at the time, 3-point dogs. And with that, I thought if there's any team that can mess with the Ravens and all they bring, it's the champs. And it's not just because they won the championship. It's because of just how potent this offense is, Ryan. What are you expecting, and are there any players on either side that you're expecting to stand out tonight?
Yeah, honestly, I expect a lot of offense. As much as these two teams, especially Baltimore's, I think an elite level defense, and Kansas City's defense is pretty decent. I do think we're going to see a lot of scoring tonight. I won't be surprised if both teams end up in the 30s, just because both of their offenses are so good. Obviously, on the Chiefs side, it's going to be Mahomes, and they focus on Hill and Kelsey. That's what it is. They have these other receivers, Watkins and Demarcus Robinson and McCole Hardman, and they don't ever really seem to throw to him very much, or at least consistently where we can ever trust him for fantasy purposes. So I think it's always the big three. We'll see what Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do this week. He really apparently his Hall of Fame bust was put on hold last week when he didn't exactly have 200 total yards like people expect every game. So I'm very interested to watch him tonight, to see him against a pretty good defense of what he can do, because the Texans that they played the first week, they're a terrible defense. So if he didn't do that well, there should have been a problem. So he is the player I'm most interested to watch tonight. On the Ravens side, obviously Lamar runs the show. Mark Andrews is his boy, and we'll see about Hollywood. I mean, he is so up and down. You never know what to expect from this guy. But in a game where they're going to score some points, I'm going to figure that he's going to do something as well. I can't really just have too much happiness about Miles Boykin. This could be a game where Willie Snead is sneaky, with some slot play.
On a team with a deep bench, I actually have Willie Snead. I'm not starting him, but if he's gonna get the targets in a few games from now, especially when we're hitting bye weeks and more players are getting hurt, might have to flex him. It's not that ridiculous if he's getting targets, but still, I'm in wait-and-see mode. But when I'm seeing it, I mean, there has to be somebody else who's catching passes besides Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing is, like, Lamar Jackson led the league in touchdown passes. Like, who did he throw them to? There's Mark Andrews and Brown, who was unplayable for about 8 weeks. Where the hell did he throw 30-something touchdowns to? I've never been able to figure it out. So that's the funny thing about both these pass offenses. They're two of the best in the league. They both have one receiver and a tight end, and they haven't got anything else. And These quarterbacks keep putting up stats. It's like they get lost somewhere, but Jackson gets to keep them, and Mahomes gets to keep them. I don't know. I mean, it's just J.K. Dobbins going to do something. He was disappeared last week.
Another thing, Ryan. How's the Ravens' run game going to work? We saw two different game plans in the 2 weeks prior. As an Ingram owner, if I'm down by, let's say, 10 to 15 points, I'm freaking out right now. What do you
probably
think?
Not winning.
How much of Dobbins are we going to see now tonight?
Who knows? We got how much Gus Edwards did we see last week?
God.
I mean, they ran for 240 yards as a team last week, and nobody ran for 100 yards. So they really just split it up really well. I guess coaches, obviously don't care about fantasy football.
They don't at all. I'll tell you this, Ryan. Coaches and players, I mean, not all players, the ones that don't have as much of a spotlight on them, they love it. They think it's great because they're getting fans from it. Those main stars, they hate the coaches, the managers. They hate fantasy football. I've talked to a lot of public relations teams over the years, Ryan, when producing shows. They hate fantasy. And the reason is because fantasy focuses more on the individual and not the team. And sports are supposed to be about the team sports when it's a team atmosphere, which I get. But at the same time, hey, you get fans where you can get fans. Fantasy football has elevated the game of football. Come on.
Not only that, but you have a bad game, you got 400 jackoffs on Twitter adding you. Hey, thanks for coaching my fantasy league, jackass. Like, of course, God, if you learn nothing else from this stream, don't tweet at athletes.
Right. Don't do that. And especially, by the way, I just want to say this. James White, shame on you.
Oh,
if you went at James White. And this is not a joke. The guy suffered a family tragedy, okay? Your fantasy teams can wait. I'm sorry. I know it's your investment, but I'm not sorry. He suffered a family tragedy that's bigger than your fantasy teams. And anyone that went after him, I saw on fantasy Twitter, people were disappointed, let down that he didn't play. Get the hell out of here. I nearly cursed. I'm not going to curse. I said, get the hell out of here. So with that, Ryan, I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
You said the 60s. This game could be in the 60s, 54.5. Are you locking in the over?
I really am. I really think there's going to be a lot of points. It just seems that the offenses are both too good for the defenses to hold them down. And I think they're both going to throw a decent amount. And who can, the Chargers did pretty well against the Chiefs last week, but their offense is just so well. And then the Ravens are going to have to play well to keep up with them. I'm with you. I took the Chiefs in the points tonight. I can't not take points with the Chiefs.
Right, exactly. It's like the Chiefs are dogs. I'm going to take them, especially, you have now it's up to 3.5. When I got it 5 days ago, it was 3. So,
nice.
So that's, not anymore. At least, different sites have different odds, though. That's the thing, Ryan. But in the 3.5 area and line movement could happen. You never know. So with that, Ryan, though, you're taking the over. I'm confident that the Chiefs are going to win as well. So we both have the Chiefs winning this Monday Night Football game. Ryan at Fighting Chance on Twitter. So don't at Ryan.
No, you can at me. You can at
me. Hey, you want to yell at me? At Fenstee Sports. We're always with you. Ryan, as always, it's been great starting off the week with you and reacting this week 3. Gave you a little bit of everything, especially all across the emotional spectrum.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens tonight, and then waivers and everything else, and it's just for everything that's been crazy over the last 6 months, especially with sports, with baseball being cut short and basketball and hockey being just paused for all that time, to just have football and just to see it go has been just a great breath of fresh air, and it's been so nice for at least some sport to have been normal, and that's I think that's been the best part of it all.
Yeah, amen to you, brother. It's a great time to be into sports with everything going on, because 5-6 months ago it was a very gloomy time. But you know what? We made it here, and now we're going to take advantage of it. And especially those who are ready to just give up. Come on, 6 months ago you'd be begging to be in this position right now. That's right. So with that, Ryan Hallam, Justin Fensterman, we thank our guy Ed Bunnell as well for tolerating us. So we'll see if we're invited back, according to Ed. But Ryan, as always, man, we always dominate because there isn't any other option. We just win as a family, as one, all together.